Well, how about this? IBS, acid reflux, GERD, ulcers and ulcerated colitis, celiac disease, Crohn's disease, bacterial and fungal overgrowth, autoimmune diseases, brain-related conditions. Dr. Colbert has got the answer to all of these things in case you happen to have them. Physician, heal thyself. Dr. Don Colbert has had to do just that. He was suffering from recurring bouts of sickness. So how did he find a cure? Take a look.
Helping his patients and readers get healthy is Dr. Don Colbert's passion. Before he studied nutrition, he had become quite unhealthy himself. Dr. Colbert believes the condition of the gut determines much of one's overall health. He explains how gut problems lead to a long list of diseases and the solutions that can prevent them in his newest book, Dr. Colbert's Healthy Gut Zone.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Don Colbert. Doctor, it's good to see you. Why is the gut health so important to overall health?
Well, Pat, I didn't realize this back 35 years ago when I started medicine, but now I know that up to 90% of all disease starts with an unhealthy gut. And I went through that in the late 80s, and little did I realize that I had put the problem on myself by prescribing myself antibiotics when I got sick with a sinus infection or bronchitis. And instead of resting my body and taking good nutrition, good food, I didn't rest. I simply took an antibiotic, and I would do this every 4 to 6 months when I would get sick and run down. And eventually I developed irritable bowel syndrome, where I had all kind of abdominal bloating and gas and diarrhea. But I just took some meds to stop it because this was when I was practicing conventional medicine. But then a few years later, I developed psoriasis, an autoimmune disease. But what I really developed was I've developed leaky gut, or increased intestinal permeability, which sets the stage for almost every chronic disease, and especially autoimmune diseases, which psoriasis is just one of many.
Well, now, what is this leaky gut thing? I mean, does it actually leak? I mean, is that an actual term?
Well, a leaky gut doesn't mean you need to wear Depends or a diaper. That's not that. A leaky gut simply means, if you can picture a coffee filter, and picture filling that coffee filter with coffee, and you brew a nice cup of coffee. But now picture that coffee filter, which symbolizes your small intestines, where your nutrition is absorbed. Now, picture taking an ice pick and poking holes in that coffee filter, and then pouring the coffee in there and making your cup of coffee. What happens? You have all these coffee grounds that should have been kept out, goes into your coffee. A similar thing happens with leaky gut, which is increased intestinal permeability, because we are fearfully and wonderfully made. God has made this intestinal lining, the small intestines, to be a semi-permeable membrane composed of finger-like projections. And these cells are one cell thick in the small intestines, but the surface area of these cells is spread out, is the size of a tennis court. The job of this is to allow us to absorb our nutrients, our simple sugars, our fatty acids, our amino acids, our vitamins, our minerals, but it's to keep out all the bad, the yeast, the undigested food particles, the toxins, the chemicals. But what happens is our gut is damaged, mainly brought on by a lot of the meds doctors prescribe, and it pries these cells open. These finger-like projections get pried open, and we develop microscopic holes like that coffee filter that's been poked, that's had holes poked in it with that, you can poke holes in it with that ice pick, and then all of a sudden the coffee grounds come through. But what comes through is partially digested food. And what that is inflammation in the gut, food sensitivities, irritable bowel symptoms, gut symptoms, but eventually it causes systemic inflammation. That same inflammation starts to affect the blood-brain barrier, opens it up, so we get inflammatory mediators into the brain, leading to depression, anxiety, ADHD, dementia, Parkinson's. But one of the biggest things is obesity. When we have the gut compromised, bad bacteria start to overgrow, good bacteria are diminished, and then we get an abundance of this bacteria called firmicutes that cause us to crave more sugar, carbs, and starches, and they cause us to extract more calories from our food. So it starts with simply medications and food. So I talk about the 7 key foods or the 7 key things that trigger a leaky gut, and then the foods that perpetuate the leaky gut. And the most common meds are antibiotics, proton pump inhibitors or acid blocking meds, and anti-inflammatory meds, but also GMO foods and artificial sweeteners. These kill off the good bacteria in our gut.
Doctor, let me ask you this. I mean, how many dentists are there that give antibiotics? They think it's an infection in your tooth. How many doctors are there that understand what you're talking about? This is a health crisis in America, and a lot of it's caused by the fact we start throwing antibiotics to little children when they're little in their infancy.
Absolutely right. And again, what happens so often is they overprescribe antibiotics, and then after the antibiotics, with probiotics and prebiotics that simply get the good bacteria growing again. Because, Pat, what happened to me with my IBS and the psoriasis, to make a long story short, I changed my diet. I took some gut healing supplements that heal a leaky gut. I planted good bacteria. I killed off the yeast and the bad bacteria. The IBS healed. The psoriasis went away, and I've been 30 years without psoriasis. And that's an autoimmune disease they say is incurable. But I've used this program for the last 30 years for my patients, and we see absolute miracles with transforming the gut health, because the gut health is the foundation of all health.
Well, talk about the foods that'll do the job for you. What are they?
The foods that do the job are not GMO foods. Yeah. They're living foods. In fact, I talk about so let's talk about the foods that heal. Mainly, these are the key gut healing foods. Lots of veggies, lots of olive oil, high in polyphenols, as well as what we call resistant starches that feed the good bacteria in the gut that produces butyrate, which helps to heal the gut. Resistant starches are green bananas, but when they turn yellow, they're full of sugar. Sugar, carbs, and starches feed the bad bacteria and prevent the gut from healing, but also fiber. Soluble, especially soluble, insoluble, like psyllium husk powder. It is so good for helping to heal the gut, as well as probiotics, prebiotics, and polyphenols. I call them my gut power tools. and polyphenols are olive oil, green tea, black tea, organic coffee, dark chocolate, berries, berries, berries. These are gut healing, gut restoring foods. And then probiotic foods like kombucha. I tell people goat milk or coconut yogurt or kefir. Dairy is highly inflammatory for the gut. That needs to be left on the altar for a while. And so I simply put it all together with a low carb, low starch, no sugar diet, crucify the flesh for about 4 to 6 weeks. Your gut heals. Then you can introduce some of the foods you love. But one of the greatest foods that harm the gut is gluten or wheat. Once gut is compromised, wheat contains over 23,000 proteins that can inflame the gut, because gut is highly inflammatory because it's no longer the amber fields of grain that we used to see hundreds of years ago. Now it's dwarf wheat, which is highly inflammatory, and it causes tremendous weight gain. So wheat.
Doctor, how do you get gluten-free? Gluten is what holds the flour together, isn't it? I mean, are there breads that don't have gluten in them?
Absolutely there are, and that's the good part about it. We have gluten-free breads that don't have that inflammatory protein in it. There's also millet bread. There's also paleo and keto breads and seed breads. But gluten is inflammatory. To heal the gut, we need to lay gluten on the altar for at least 4 to 6 weeks. Now, I had to lay it on the altar for years. Now I can have a little bit and it won't hurt me, but gluten is still my enemy.
Well, you talk in your book about the bacteria, that if we get rid of all the bacteria, we've done ourselves a disservice. So we really need to get out and pray in the dirt. Tell us about that.
Okay, right. Well, what's happened as a society, we overuse soaps and cleansers. We see our body is composed of over 100 trillion good bacteria that literally makes up 2/3 to 70% of our immune system. And when we wash all the bacteria off of our skin, off of our body, and we keep washing it off, literally, it eventually affects your health. So again, we're too clean. We need to have a little healthier. not dirt from the slums, but dirt from the fields, from the playground. Healthy dirt is good for us because it has that good bacteria in it.
Well, you've got the lawyers saying kids can't play outside. It's really good when they're playing in the dirt and playing football and out there roughing things up then. Is that right?
Absolutely right, because the good bacteria trains our immune system. And so many people are hyper clean. Let your in fact, when my grandkids come over, I don't give them a bath for a day or two because I'm helping their good bacteria. Now, the mom gets mad at me, but I say, no, I'm helping their immune system. I'm training their immune system. And don't stink. Kids don't stink. Okay.
Well, Doctor, I think, you know, we have as a nation, there is a crisis of obesity. It's unbelievable how fat we are. And this book, ladies and gentlemen, has the answer. You really need to get it. Dr. Colbert's Healthy Gut Zone. It's a fabulous book. And we can get it wherever books are sold, I guess. Doctor, is there any special place we can order it?
Well, they can get it at Amazon. They can go to drcolbert.com, or most any bookstore will carry this book. But if they can't find it, go to my website, drcolbert.com.
We do have a crisis of obesity in America, don't we?
Absolutely. But again, what we find is most of those obese patients, when we examine their microbiome or their gut bacteria, is too many firmicutes from too much sugar, carbs, and starches, and not enough living food. Our body was created to consume living food, not GMO foods, not sugars, carbs, and starches. And so we simply repair the gut by choosing living foods that heal the gut.
God bless you. Fabulous. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't recommend this strongly enough. People, you know, I'm 91 years old. When people say what goes on, I follow a lot of what the doctor is saying. I mean, religiously, I eat a lot of vegetables. I've not eaten a lot of beef. And I take probiotics and prebiotics and berries and lots of berries. And I just love them, and bran and oatmeal and things like that. Ladies and gentlemen, it works. Please get the man's book. I want you to stay healthy.